everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Find the Next Gear. Got Andrew Bagrin here. Super pumped to have you, Andrew. Thanks for joining.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So the premise here is obviously to talk about founder-run, founder-led companies, taking a company from inception and ideation to scale, growth, and then in your situation, acquisition, which is generally the holy grail. Congrats on that.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah. So your company originally founded was Omninet, and you guys were acquired about 3 years ago. Is that correct?
Yes, there's a little bit deeper story to that. But the first company is actually called My Digital Shield back in 2013. It got acquired by Snap One, which was Snap AV at the time. That's what brought me to Charlotte. And then I'm not going to go through the painful details, but started Omninet afterwards, and then got acquired by Citracom in 2021. Got
it. Congratulations. And so, are you still kind of on board at Citracom? What type of capacity?
No, yeah. So I talked to them. Still an equity holder there, but I stayed there for about a year and left after about a year. So it's like I'm not in any full-time capacity at all.
Yeah. And so, just for my own curiosity, I'm not a serial entrepreneur, but I aspire to be one. So, I mean, what are you kind of working on that next concept?
I am actually, yeah. So I've been working for a couple of years on a new platform. It's still in stealth mode. It's pre-launch. So that's kind of been in the works for a bit. Yeah. In the meantime, I've been doing some other type of consulting, some M&A consulting, pre and post merger type stuff. And a few other things too, kind of just helping some people out. Also helping a friend who, he wanted to launch a company. This was about 3 years ago. So I've been involved in that, getting it going, putting it together. So keeping myself busy for sure.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about the origin story. I mean, had you always aspired to be an entrepreneur? And it kind of sounds like it to me, just based upon this short conversation, kind of an idea man. But, was it corporate America, got burned out, got tired, or, hey, I'm actually a good engineer. Let me create something. Talk to me a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I feel like even through school, I was trying to make something and sell it to my classmates or something like that. So I feel like it's kind of been in my DNA for a while. But really, what happened? I was in corporate America, and it's not that I got bored or tired of it. What happened is I was really trying to build something new, and that was kind of my role there. And I talked to a lot of companies to try to build this concept, and it seems like everybody liked it, but in cybersecurity, everybody was really busy because, they couldn't find enough people, and it's just that there's so much money and everything, so they're not going to work on some new concept that nobody's begging for, So after kind of a few failed attempts at getting somebody else to build it, like a big corporation to build it, including the one I was working for, I decided to try to build it myself, and so went through together whatever I could. Help some friends and everything, and then went and knocked on some doors, and people paid for it. So from there, I actually started a company, and I obviously left my job, corporate America. That was the scariest part, is leaving the paycheck. And as I was going through and trying to do some stuff, I was able to get some angel funding through some friends. So that. And then after that, it took a while, but I went through all the pains and sufferings of trying to raise money, which was painful, especially since I didn't know what I was doing. And I was able to raise a little bit over $4 million for that first business. And, we built it. We made a lot of mistakes, learned a lot of lessons along the way, but eventually got to the point to acquisition, and we're able to sell it. And that's what brought me to Charlotte. And, since I got here, my kids grew up and I can't really go anywhere now. I'm really stuck here. So,
yeah, I'm in the same boat. And, when you started kind of the initial concept, it's funny how you kind of, it sounds like you had this idea that you couldn't really, walk away from. And so were you working, was it just nights and weekends, essentially, under the guise of corporate America, putting in time when you could?
Initially, yes. Yeah, initially that's the way I was doing. And, once I talked to some lawyers and they're like, look, you have to leave your company, you have to kind of cut it off. Otherwise, if you're going to continue further down this path. So, that's when, I pulled the trigger and, as painful as it was, but had to do it,
Did you have paying customers at that time, or was it kind of the actual leap of faith where you had conceptually people were on the same page with you? You saw that there was a potential need in the market.
Yeah, it was one of these things where like no paying customers. I literally had to go with it was about a year with no salary and actually putting money into it. So it's definitely painful, like putting all that stuff into it. You really have to believe that it's gonna work.
Yeah, no, I've been in the same boat myself, where I think it was like 7 months for my first paycheck, and like I had this business plan, and I was confident that I was going to eclipse my earnings in like 3 months, and then you jump out. Like the way the business ran was actually the way the business actually worked did not align with how I thought the business would run on paper. Like literally had to throw it out the window. And what about kind of like leadership team? I mean, was it you who jumped out, leap of faith, or did you have some partners? Some folks helping on the dev side, maybe somebody on the growth side, or was that all?
Yeah, so I did have a friend on the dev side that really helped me out a lot. But he was just kind of helping me out on like nights and weekends as well, and eventually, hired some developers to kind of move forward with it. I think initially we just hired one developer, and then, once we got some finances, then we hired some more developers, and it kind of grew from there.
How paid your first paying customer? I remember my first paycheck was so small, but it was like such a big, monumentous win. My desk that I look at.
So the problem was we were selling a service, and at the time, I'm trying to remember, I think it was like $79 a month or something like that. It was like really, really cheap. So it was kind of a volume thing. You have to get the volumes out there, but just having those initial, hey, somebody's paying for it, so people see value in it somehow. That now we just got to figure out how to scale it properly. That was kind of the thing. And I remember hitting milestones, like getting to, hey, we're now getting $10,000 a month in subscriptions. It was just like, whoa, we crossed the threshold, and then crossing that million a year mark, that was just, once you hit those boundaries, those thresholds, it's like it's makes you feel a lot better, that what you're doing is the right thing. But you're right. It's like I walked into this thing with the unreal expectations. I'm going to grow this thing so big and everybody's going to buy it. And then reality sets in, and then I remember somebody told me when I was just starting out, a serial entrepreneur, he said, it's like we have these unrealistic expectations, but otherwise we wouldn't do what we do, and so he kind of like said that, and I'm like, nah, you don't know what you're talking about. I'm going to do this, and he was right, but you got to just stick with it and keep going. Yeah, it's easy to give up.
Yeah, no, it's crazy. And I want to ask you a question about that here a little bit later, but it's definitely a characteristic that I see in successful entrepreneurs is to not give up, the perseverance. And so product market fit, right? So you went out and you had this idea, you talked to some potential customers, but how long did it really take to cobble together true product market fit? I mean, you mentioned it was a year before you started getting paid, because that's a part where I feel most folks struggle with, and I struggle with that myself. Like, product market fit, but then you bring it with the market and you don't most of the time.
Yeah. I mean, we struggle with that for sure. And in fact, we had to go into a phase of educating the market a little bit, because it was, you think that, hey, everybody's going to be begging for this, but that's not nearly the case, And then it's like, well, why would I want this? Why would I do this? Why is it different than something else, And then so you got to go through this phase where you start educating people. And that takes a lot of time and a lot of effort. And then the other thing is the service I was providing, it was a platform, but the service we're providing, it's people were like very hesitant to adopt it because we're new. They're waiting. And I remember like 2 or 3 years after, people started saying to me, well, you've been around for a while. You're not going to disappear tomorrow on me. So I'll go ahead and give it a try. And they're like, seriously? Yeah. So I realize in some markets you have to, especially the one I was in, which is the MSP market, you can't go out there and just spend all your money on marketing and everything. You have to take it slow and prove longevity, and kind of have to go through those paces.
Yeah, the MSP space in particular is super competitive and tough, and brand recognition and equity is like a big component to sales. And to your point, education ties back to that. Like I literally thought I was going to sell my company in 5 years and, buy an island and all that crap. And none of that has been true or close to reality. But I've spent a lot of my time educating. Like literally, I'm tired of the education component, because it does get old. But a really big job. I'd say sometimes the most important job for an entrepreneur.
Right, for sure. Absolutely. Yeah, we spent a lot of time doing that. All the webinars and everything that we did is all about education.
Yeah. So what was really the defining moment for starting your company? I mean, I realized that you got it to a part. You talked to the attorney, basically suggested it was time to leave. But again, was it just this kind of crystallized thought that you knew that there's this need within the market that you could not put down?
I don't know. I really don't know what it was. Maybe, I think so. Maybe I was just kind of upset at everybody else that they wouldn't do it. It's hard. Yeah, trying to remember back to what the actual defining moment was. Part of it was I was with my friend and we were at his place drinking, and then I was telling him that I'm so frustrated that I can't get anybody to do this. This is like everybody thinks it's a great idea and it's needed out there, but no, like everybody's like, I had even AT&T did some market research, and so I got some good information on that. And everything. But then they're like, yeah, we don't have time right now. We don't have the resources to do it. And everybody else kind of did the same thing. And I'm like, I told him, man, I'm so frustrated. I almost feel like going out there and doing it myself. I've gotten just said some drunk words like that. And then the next day he calls me up. He's like, hey, were you serious about that? I'm like, maybe, so I think that's kind of where we started working on it. And, from there, just like you put enough time and working in it, you can't give up, you put so much effort in.
Totally agreed, man. I mean, that's kind of a chuckle I have with my wife. It's like, I'm so far in, you know what I mean? Like I can't go. I feel like we also all need that kind of devil on our shoulder to push us just a little bit, right? And it sounds like you found that breaking point, which is great. But conversely to that, was there a time where you thought about hanging it up? Because I haven't had that situation yet, but entrepreneurship, it's hard, it's lonely, and it's massive ups and massive downs. And I personally feel like you take 2 steps forward and sometimes 3 back, right?
Yeah, I'll tell you this. Earlier on, I remember whenever, it's like, okay, going maybe 4 or 5 months without a paycheck, right? I was sitting there calling people, trying to talk to people and everything. And I feel like my days were like this, right? It's like I wake up in the morning, I start working. It's hard to even get a phone call back. And then, sorry about that. Start to get a phone call back, and then, it's like you get towards the evening and stuff, and then it's like, you start working on things that you're working off hours and everything, and then it's like you get so frustrated, you're ready to give up. You're like, screw this, I'm going to go back to corporate America. I start having some drinks, and then I get some liquid courage, and I'm like, no, I'm going to do this, and then I'm up until like 1 a.m. working, and then in the morning it's like start all over again, right? And the same thing. It's like, you get that 5, 6 o'clock where you're like, screw this, I'm giving up and everything. You have some drinks and then get a little bit more courage. You're like, no, I'm going to do this. I'm going to kick ass and everything. And then you just keep going. That was one of them. The other time I remember, I got somebody called me and offered me a really good position. It was a VP position for a corporation, and it was a very, very well paid one. And that was also kind of one of those where I'm like sitting there and just edging and going, oh man, should I just give up, and just go back to corporate America? And, I made the decision not to just because I got really committed to it. And, those are probably the 2 things.
Yeah. Well, it's funny too, that you mentioned about kind of the every day you're starting over is a new one. And what I realized as well is that, like, I feel like corporate America, if you have a bad week or a bad month, you can kind of phone it in at 60% and like just kind of coast through it a little bit, get through whatever that challenge is, and then ratchet it back up to 85% and just kind of put it on cruise control. I found like, didn't matter if I went out the night before, didn't matter if I went on vacation, like I've got to get up, I've got to work, like nobody's coming to rescue me. Like it's all on me and my team to kind of move things forward. And that's one thing that I do miss, is that it would be nice just to be able to kind of phone it in for a little bit here and there and not have to be just go all the time.
Right, for sure.
So what's the number one trait do you think of entrepreneurs that make it versus those that don't? And you kind of alluded to this at the earlier part of the call, the discussion, but I wanted to revisit that.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's like, I I think the ones that make it is just the perseverance. It's like they just keep going, and when things go wrong and it looks like things are failing, they just kind of like just re-energize. Find that energy somewhere and just keep going and find a new way to do it. It's not just like well shit. It's like, well, these guys are doing something similar, so let's give up. It's like, no, we're gonna do it better. And I'm glad they're doing it. That means that there's a need in the market. So it's the mentality of always, hey, this is good. Trying to find the good news out of everything.
Yeah, it's interesting. I'd say like 9 out of 10 times when I have this conversation, I ask that question, perseverance is like that trait, that characteristic that pops up. I think appetite for risk as well, especially when things are not going your way, is the ability to kind of like fight through the pain, and still sleep at night a little bit. Although that's still daunting. I'm 7 years in, I still wake up, 4:00 in the morning, all kinds of thoughts with like what I got to do the next day.
Right, for sure.
If you go back in time, give yourself, one piece of advice prior to starting your company, what would that be?
Well, there's a lot of advice I'd give myself. There's a lot of things, obviously, I've learned. I think just having, one of the problems I had is, I was in corporate America, and I had a really, really good team of very smart people, but everybody kind of lived their life in a way that they can't not make a paycheck. I fortunately was able to do that, for a while. But it's just having like a good team of people, like that you can trust, that are really good at the things that you're not good at. That's always ideal. And I remember like going through it. It's even VCs, they hate to see an individual founder. They like to see co-founders, people that are good in their respective areas. So that's definitely a thing that I did not do. In a way, I definitely had my friend who was from the development side, and that was helping me from that perspective. But just having other people, having somebody who would be good at finance and corporate stuff would have been great, because those are all things I was not really good at and had to learn all along the way and learn as I went, and made a lot of mistakes, but hey, now I have all that knowledge.
Some sage advice, and that's something I've struggled with myself. Is when I first started my company, I was kind of a lone wolf without founding team, and that can be tough because it's hard to be, jack of all trades, master of none. I find people that can fill your gaps, so you can focus on those things that you're good at. One last question, and then we'll get you out of here in a few moments. But going back to kind of the advice, you kind of alluded to almost like I don't want to call it a money trap, but you got the funding round, and then it was almost like you were doing a tour, right? And I feel like a lot of entrepreneurs, especially in the tech sector, do find themselves in that trap where they get funded, and then all of a sudden they're just chasing capital like the entire time. Like, it sounds like maybe you were able to break away from that a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, especially the first one, that was, it felt like 50% of my time was chasing money, during a period of time, like after the first seed round. So it's, and I heard that that's normal. It's usually like 40% of the time you're out there chasing money, talking to VCs. Even if you just raise money, you start talking to them again, or have something to do with around raising money. And another big chunk of your time is you're just making sure everybody's seeing the vision and everybody's on the same page and everybody's marching in the same direction. So that's I just spent a lot of time doing those two things, and then whenever I could, I'm doing things on the engineering side, of course, and doing other things, on the business side. So it's, I don't know if that answers your question, but
It totally does, man. And I appreciate sharing the perspective. And it sounds like, during the second run, the focus on money shifted a little bit, right?
Yeah. It's, and actually the second run, we were fortunate. We did a really, really good seed round, and we were able to get, that lasted us until acquisition. So we were going to go out there and get another round of funding. And that's kind of when we got approached to get acquired. So we decided to make the decision to get acquired as opposed to getting another round.
Got it. No, that's great, man. That's great. All right, a few more questions and we're done. Really appreciate you taking the time, Andrew. So what's the favorite aspect of being an entrepreneur?
I think there's two things. One is the freedom, right? It's being able to, like, I kind of forget how it was, but I look at people and set an alarm, they wake up in the morning, they have to drive to an office, they deal with all the type of stuff because they have to follow whatever somebody set for them, you know? And in my case, it's especially now because I'm kind of between companies, but there's a certain amount of freedom, even though initially when you're getting going and everything, you gotta work your butt off, you know, but eventually you do have some flexibility and some freedom to where it's like, especially if you have good people in charge of the different aspects of the business, you know, you have a lot of that freedom. And the other thing is just the control, right? I'm definitely not a control freak, and I like giving people control of their part of the business and everything, but it's like things happen the way you want them to happen. You know, it's not, you set a certain culture in the company, you know, you have the type of people that are, it's just kind of, it's as if it's not work, you're hanging out with your friends doing fun stuff, you know, and that part I really, really love and enjoy. And I mean, there's definitely atmospheres like that out there, but I feel they're hard to find, and it's not always something that you want to do, you know? So I think that's the part that I love the most, because you're enjoying life and you're doing great things, and you're making a lot of money doing it and helping a lot of people. So it's great.
Yeah, culture is super important, especially too nowadays. I feel like a lot of companies are selling culture, and 90% of it's complete BS. You know?
Yeah.
The antithesis to that question: what's the worst part about being an entrepreneur? Sleepless nights?
Yeah, especially in the beginning. You know, it's just oh God. I mean, yeah, it's a lot of work, but as long as it's exciting work, it's fine. But I think the worst part is definitely the uncertainty, the sleepless nights, you know, you have those roller coasters, and you have those moments where you just kind of like, oh my God, everything's falling apart, and you know, I failed and everything. So you definitely have those moments, and they suck for sure. Yeah. You know, once things get going a little bit, and you have less of the dips, you know, then it gets a little bit more stable and easy. But I'll tell you, there's periods in my life where I need that, and I kind of enjoy it. And, you know, you kind of enjoy the punch in the face, and you're down, and you're like, all right, how do I get out of this hole? You know? That stuff that is at the time. You look back and you're like,
stuff when you're in the valleys, though. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
All right, so 2 more questions, and we're out of here. But what's your biggest success? Is it the acquisition of your company? Is it building something from scratch that people actually wanted to buy?
Yeah, you know, those are both very exciting things for sure. Yeah, building something from scratch for sure. That's an exciting thing, and it took time, but that was just, you know, and then people are like, wow, you know, it's like, you built this, you know, you invented this. Like that's really exciting. The acquisition, I mean, finally getting fundraising, just because it took so much effort and everything, but finally getting that was exciting as well. But the acquisition, I'd have to say, that's kind of like like it just makes you feel really good, because you kind of went full circle, you know, and you completed the cycle, I guess, you know?
Yeah, and I'm sure too, I think, not that all entrepreneurs have something to prove, but like, it's almost like, hey, I did it. Like I thought I could do it. I sought out to do it. I did it. And it worked. I won. Yeah.
And some people, they like lifestyle businesses, right? Yeah. Where they're not in it to sell it, you know, but it's kind of like, as soon as I got into it, everybody's like, oh, what's your exit strategy? You know, how do you, like, everybody's kind of, and I think that expectation got set in my head that what success is once you exit, you know? So I think that's why eventually, whenever it happened and you did that, you got acquired, then that was like, you know, I'm a successful entrepreneur finally, you know? So I think that was part of it that made this so exciting.
Got it. Yeah. And then last question for you, man. What about your biggest failure?
There are so many of them.
I mean, I live them every day, you know?
Yeah. If I was going to highlight one, I don't know. I made a lot of mistakes, and trying to think of one that would be considered the biggest, you know, it's like, I hired some people that I shouldn't have, for sure. You know, and I didn't get rid of people fast enough when I should have, for sure. You know, and the problem is when you have bad people in the company, it's kind of like a cancer, right? It spreads, and you have one person that's sitting there and just talking negatively about everything, and other people start doing it. Yeah. You know, so I think that's probably a big thing. You know, I love people, and I love, you know, making people successful and everything, and helping them out and everything. But it's like, if somebody is bad news for your company, you just got to get rid of them quick.
So that's also something that's brought up a good amount on this is being able to cut bait quicker with people who aren't germane or relevant to your business. Or what I see a lot is people, you know, founders or companies outgrow the personnel, right? And like they're no longer like, in line with the skill that you need.
Right.
So listen, I understand you have a business that's in stealth mode, but like, how can people find you? Are you pretty busy out there on social media?
I haven't been. I've been extremely quiet on social media for the last couple of years. How do people find me? I guess, if you follow me on social media, I'm on LinkedIn, I'm on Facebook, I'm pretty quiet on Twitter, but, I'll start talking about it as soon as we're ready to talk about it. I'll definitely start talking about it.
Awesome, man. Well, let me know when. I'm happy to kind of help disseminate the message. And Andrew, really appreciate you taking the time with me today. Sincerely, thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, bro. I appreciate it.